looking for hope. The union representing laid-off Terrace Bay mill workers makes a plea to the provincial government. Good evening and thank you for joining us. It's been 2 months since the Terrace Bay pulp mill shut its doors indefinitely, and hundreds of laid-off workers are still looking for answers about its future.
Members of the Steelworkers Union traveled to Queen's Park in Toronto yesterday to lobby the Ford government for help and hope. Jonathan Wilson reports.
Workers from the mill, members of USW Local 665, are here today. Welcome them. They're watching us now, and they're looking for answers from this government.
Members of USW Local 665 were welcomed by the Ontario NDP when they arrived on their lobbying mission to Toronto. The official opposition party also organized a news conference in the Queen's Park studio where union members spoke about how dire the situation in Terrace Bay has become since the pulp mill was idled at the start of January.
We'd love any information that Didier Burla can give us, but most of all, we have to pay for things. So we've got 267 employees right now sitting at home on unemployment waiting for word. If we can get some kind of hope, some kind of message out from the Ford government here that they're behind us, that would be excellent. That's all we're looking for, is a little bit of hope.
Later in the legislature, NDP leader Marit Stiles went after the Ford government on behalf of the Terrace Bay workers, calling for assurances that something is being done to get the mill reopened.
And what is this government doing? They're saying the same things they always say. They're making these empty promises. Those workers came a long way today to hear this government say, we are going to fight for you and we are going to fight for Northern Ontario.
We have been fighting for them every single day, and the opposition knows that. They are taking advantage of the situation to play political theater and political games once again today. Meanwhile, we're working the phones. We're looking for the opportunities. We're looking for the operators. We're the ones making the investments in the forestry sector to make sure that Terrace Bay and Scriber and every community in the north can benefit from a strong forestry sector.
Minister Graydon Smith went on to speak about his recent announcement in Timmins regarding the province providing $60 million to support biomass energy projects around the north.
And I'd like to say the biomass projects have nothing to do with helping the workers in Terrace Bay. There has been no communication with the workers in Terrace Bay whatsoever.
Minister Smith did meet with the USW leaders during the lunch break at Queen's Park, but Downey says although there were many assurances, there is still no firm plan presented by Smith for the pulp mill to reopen. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
Webequie and Martin Falls First Nations have reached another milestone in their partnership with the province to build a new all-seasons road to their communities in the Ring of Fire. Ontario Mining Minister George Peary got together with the two chiefs at the Prospectors and Developers Conference in Toronto to announce the latest news on the Northern Road link.
This agreement reflects that progress and aims to ignite collaborative discussions for proactive planning on these roads. I know the community development agreement we've reached here today will help us work together to build stronger communities and prepare for a future that is connected by roads.
The Ford government, Martin Falls, and Webequie signed an agreement to develop community infrastructure projects that support future development opportunities in the area, including the Northern Road link to the mineral-rich Ring of Fire region. The chiefs say they look forward to the opportunities this opens up for their communities.
It's very important work for us. We take the lead in that, working with our staff and our partners, and we have very important, very capable people are working with us, and we want to continue to do that, take the lead on any developments that happen in our lands.
We want to be able to, to work with the government side by side, also work with industry, to address some of our needs in our communities.
There are no details yet as to when construction will begin on the new roads.
The province's Special Investigations Unit is now investigating after Thunder Bay Police responded to a weapons call at the Thunder Centre on Friday afternoon. Police, including emergency and canine units, responded to a man waving what was thought to be a handgun. It was later discovered to be an airsoft pistol. An officer shot the 43-year-old suspect with a non-lethal anti-riot weapon, which can be used to shoot plastic bullets, tear gas, or other projectiles. The accused wasn't injured but was taken to hospital as a precaution after his arrest. The SIU is compelled to investigate any time an officer discharges a weapon. Anyone with information about the incident, including video or photos, is asked to contact the SIU.
More than 2 weeks after it happened, Laurentian University is releasing some details about a cyber incident that paralyzed its IT systems. The university says personal information was stolen from students and staff at the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, which also has a campus here in Thunder Bay, as well as a freshwater ecology unit. Laurentian officials confirm a limited data breach resulting from a broader cyber incident, which came to the university's attention on February 18th. While the investigation moves ahead, Laurentian will provide those affected by the breach with free credit monitoring for 2 years.
An emergency room nurse who was born and raised in the Thunder Bay area is urging local people here to demand a ceasefire in Gaza.
The Doctors Without Borders nurse recently completed a tour of duty in the war-torn region. She says conditions there are getting worse by the day. Lee Noonan has more.
It's so much worse than you can possibly imagine.
With decades of nursing experience, including time with Doctors Without Borders in other war zones, Amy Lee Potter says the situation in Gaza is worse than anything she's seen before. She's urging everyone back in her hometown to support the relief agencies working in the region and to support the call for a ceasefire.
This is a population that will die without a ceasefire. This is catastrophic what's happening there right now. So the call for a ceasefire, continue to push friends and family in Canada and abroad. This is what's needed. It's what's the right thing to do.
Potter was working to set up a clinic in Al-Masawi, a designated humanitarian zone near the south end of the Gaza Strip.
It was 1.8 million at the peak, moved mostly from the north to, all the way to the end of the strip, and that's it. That's it. I mean, you talk to them and they even say, like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? There's no food. It's a desert. There's no water. We have a lot of communicable diseases starting to spread because of the poor living conditions. The reason it's not worse is it luckily is a highly vaccinated population.
Despite their efforts, Potter says the situation deteriorated while she was there as people with chronic conditions or war wounds went longer and longer without adequate treatment.
I remember one little girl, her house was shelled in October. Her family died. She was with an uncle when she came to visit us. She had external fixators, so she had a broken leg and she had these big pieces of metal in trying to put her bones back together, but they had to flee the hospital they were being treated at. So she'd received no treatment since then, including no physiotherapy. So little things like that we don't even realize that we can do. They didn't have crutches for her because you can't find crutches, so they were moving her around inside a baby stroller that didn't fit her.
Potter returned to her current home in the U.S. after 1 month, the longest stay that Doctors Without Borders is allowing in Gaza because of the danger. In that month, she says the homes of 3 of her Palestinian colleagues were hit, killing 11 people.
The people who are affected are not the enemy, for lack of a better term. They're not fighting back. They're not fighting Hamas. They're not fighting IDF. They're not fighting anyone. They're literally just trying to survive every single day.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Matawa Education is celebrating its female educators this week ahead of International Women's Day on Friday.
The 17th Annual Education Conference features a lineup of Indigenous women leaders presenting talks aimed at supporting and inspiring First Nation educators. Jessica Clement explains.
Women educators are the main focus for Matawa's 17th Annual Education Conference. The 3-day event is celebrating the role women play in the classroom and in communities as a whole, with presentations and workshops by various distinguished Indigenous women leaders. The theme for this year is Courage and Resilience, and Master of Ceremonies Janine Desmolin says it plays into a lot of the work being done throughout the First Nations.
When it comes to education itself, we have to continue to be courageous and walk a resilient step forward because we come from a long line of ancestors who paved way for us despite the hardships, difficulties, and struggles. And that's what all the talks here are about during the 3-day conference, are about how being brave to put your best step forward, continuing to do the work, and being resilient.
Day 2 of the conference featured keynote speaker Adriana Douglas-Bear. She's a jingle dress dancer and youth advocate and spoke about the struggles she's faced in her life.
And I want you to know to never hold in what's going on in your life. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. There are other routes in life than ending your own. Look at your options. Go to school, finish school. Start a new job, you don't like your job. Keep going.
With International Women's Day this Friday, Desmolin says it's critical to honor and celebrate the important women in our lives. She adds that she wants to see more women take up leadership roles and have their voices heard.
And I speak for only myself, but knowing a lot of women who don't have the same advantage of people to sit at the certain tables, to have their voices clearly heard. And we know the issues, we know what to do to pave that pathway forward, and it's up to the wider set community to create those spaces safe enough for women to take up their seats.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
For the second year in a row, Confederation College hosted an open house to mark Aviation Day. The event gives students and future students of the college's aviation programs the chance to interact with potential employers. 24 vendors were on hand to meet with students and graduates from the college's flight management and aircraft maintenance program. Local, regional, and national employees were invited as they look to hire graduates of the two programs, as well as for positions such as dock hands and flight attendants. School of Aviation Associate Dean Matt Bunn says there's an immediate need for pilots in the industry, and most of the students will get jobs right out of school.
Everybody's looking for pilots and aircraft mechanics. If you'd ask them, I'm sure that they tell you that they can't get enough right now. And so we are graduating pilots and mechanics, but we're not necessarily able to meet the demand, certainly not locally.
Here at Orange, we provide first aid and emergency care to some of these communities that are fly-in only. So we're here to recruit a bunch of pilots and hopefully AMEs as well to come join that group of people that want to come help those northern communities.
A lot of the difficulty is finding the right person to apply to. As much as it's a large industry, it's like a small community at times. So it's been awesome trying to get those contacts and making those connections early on.
The pandemic led to thousands of pilots retiring early, some out of sheer frustration, resulting in a shortage of experienced pilots in the industry. Bunn says there's a wait list of young applicants for their programs, which he notes is a good sign for the college.
After 17 years of bringing traditional Greek food and Canadian classics to Thunder Bay diners, Naos Grill and Bar will serve customers for the last time this weekend. The owners of the restaurant on West Arthur Street announced the planned closure back in January, calling it a very difficult decision. Since then, fans of Naos have been coming in to offer well wishes and enjoy their favorite meals one last time. In a statement on the restaurant's Facebook page, the owner says they're gearing up for their grand finale on Saturday. Meanwhile, a new restaurant has already announced its plans to move into the former Naos space. Chuck's Roadhouse has dozens of locations in the Greater Toronto Area, along with a few in northeastern Ontario. The popular restaurant chain is known for low-cost roadhouse classics like steak, ribs, wings, and burgers. Their opening date is yet to be announced.
Let's turn our attention to the weather now, Fiona, and we had a daytime high that was above the freezing mark once again today. It really is starting to feel like spring.
Yes, and that seems to be the trend for areas around Lake Superior. Not necessarily done with winter, though, if you head further to the northwest. Today, temperatures varied across the region. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, we had an overnight low of -8, wind chills of just -10. And during the day, winds were relatively light, mostly in the single digits, but there were a couple of hours where they kicked up to about 28 kilometers per hour. Generally from the east, times from the southeast, times from the northeast, but it was mostly easterly direction under mostly cloudy skies at times and sometimes very sunny. So a real mixed bag in Thunder Bay. Now, if we take a look at what was moving in, this is a Colorado low that was pushing in slowly throughout the day, starting to reach northwestern Ontario this afternoon and has already been felt in the Red Lake and Fort Francis region that's at times, but it's also the temperature. Now, last night it was very cold to the north. Red Lake hit a low of -24 last night. Similar temperatures through Sioux Lookout, Armstrong, and into Greenstone, where they had overnight lows of -20. At this hour, You can see they've warmed up about 20 degrees in the last, I'd say, 18 hours or so. So they're currently at -4, wind chills of around -11. Greenstone -2, and again, wind chills fairly minor, maybe -4 or so, but with lots of sunshine. You've got that blowing snow as we saw on the radar. At this moment, Fort Frances, mostly cloudy, but they have had much milder temperatures. They had an overnight low that was around -7, and similar overnight lows throughout Atikokan along the North Shore, Nipigon Marathon down through Wawa and Sault Ste. Marie, where they've got a mix of sun and cloud at this hour and are also on the plus side. So you can see there's a real difference in the temperatures just within our region. Now here in the city of Thunder Bay right now, we are fairly close to the freezing mark, and tonight temperature's really not going to move much, only down to -1 and a wind chill of -5 under partly cloudy skies. Winds will stay quite light to moderate overnight, which is why we're not seeing any extreme wind chill values. But these milder temperatures are going to continue despite the colder air as you head towards Red Lake. Thunder Bay seems to be well protected for the next few days.
Okay, thanks a lot, Fiona. Interesting to see the variance across our region.
Definitely.
All right, let's turn our attention to national news now. Despite inflation falling below 3% earlier this year, the Bank of Canada says it's still not ready to lower its key interest rate. That's going to hold steady for the time being. We'll have the details right after the break.
In Canada, economic growth has come in somewhat stronger than projected in the January MPR.